Thank you everyone for being here today. We're almost at lunch, so bear with us.
Oh no,
Not yet.
No, Derek.
I know, Derek too. I know I'm not right before lunch, so I gotta go quick so Derek can go quick so people don't get too hungry.
No, we just don't want Derek to fall asleep like he's so relaxed and
But aloha, I'm Kirstin Kahaloa. I represent the district of Kona from Kailua Village to Honaunau, so I'm happy that you folks are having your first annual conference here on Hawaii Island, my favorite island, and a place that hopefully feels very welcome for those of you who are visiting us for this conference. If you see on the presentation, it says former chair of the Agriculture and Food Systems Committee. I have served as chair, and now I've been asked to sit as the Majority Caucus leader in the House, so my role has evolved and changed. But just so you folks know that I am still a champion for agriculture, I still will support all of the efforts that are most important and near and dear to your heart, and I still sit on the Committee of Agriculture and Food Systems. So right now we're in the process of training our new chair, Chair Corey Chun, from the Kunia area, and he's really excited to be in that role. And of course, you met Vice Chair Cush earlier today. I'm only gonna touch briefly. We've did so much for agriculture this session. Chair Hurd probably touched on a little bit, but today the big focus is talking about our cottage food legislation and where we stand with that. So it is a little more Department of Health heavy today. So we can go on to the next slide. You know, one of the things that's a big issue for our state is biosecurity, and that's a big part of agriculture. We can go to the next slide and the next slide. So I just wanted to touch, and I know Chair Hurd talked about it a little, but one of the things we champion this session to give you context to, we work on cottage foods, we work on value-added production, we work on biosecurity. There's a lot of different assets to increasing agricultural production here in Hawaii. So you can see Act 236, a bill that is now law that was an omnibus for biosecurity. We want to make sure that agriculture and our way of life thrives, and part of that is ensuring that invasive pests that have been very pervasive for decades get addressed, and we give the Department of Ag and Biosecurity now more tools they need to be successful and start to create an interagency effort around this with the Department of Ag and Biosecurity as the apex. And when you put all the funds in the budget and in the bill around biosecurity, we were able to secure a little over $36 million over the course of 2 years to work on biosecurity. It's a big deal. It's really important for our island, who's have been dealing with biosecurity threats like our koki frogs, like little fire ants, and now coconut rhinoceros beetle. We do not want it to get to this side of the island where it's very wet and we'll be so happy to live in this environment. We don't want to get it here. So just gonna skip over that, but that is one really important big deal that we did in the legislature, and thank you to Chair Hurd for helping steward that through, and to her department as well. So we can go to the next slide and the next slide. So one thing that's really important is helping food producers, farmers, if they would like to scale to value-added production and go, whether it's from farmers market to neighborhood selling to made in Hawaii products that can be sold anywhere in the world. We want to help support that, and the state has done different measures to ensure that we can be successful and support you in those efforts. So one of the things we were able to accomplish this past session, Act 237, is establish in statute the Food and Product Innovation Network. So we know that Maui College and the Maui Innovation Network, where's Karen, is presenting today. That is part of the Innovation Network, and we hope to see the network thrive by establishing food and product innovation networks across the state. So Maui was our first unofficial before there was even a thought to combining and creating a value-added network. And then we have the Wahiawa Value-Added Product and Innovation Center is the first kind of larger statewide built effort. So as you can see, we started the network before the network was in law. So we're excited that we were putting resources and money, but didn't establish the statute. So this is how we make this work go to the next level, by making this in statute. So part of that law says we want to establish value-added production shared centers that are state resource, but many people can use in any point of their business across the Pai'aina. So we're working on identifying a facility on Kauai in conjunction with the community college. Hawaii Island, we're hoping to establish one in East and West Hawaii, and if we need more, then we can ask and establish more. So this is something that helps build cottage food and grow a stronger value-added production industry, and we think rural communities will thrive with this kind of network, because it's hard to have big machinery on your farm, set up the facilities, go through the permitting process as you're growing your business. So we want to provide that tool, whether you're packaging your product or when you get to a certain level of scale, you have that resource available. So we can go to the next slide. So this is an example of what we want to do, is create this shared facility space, and that's just an example photo. We can move to the next. Oh,
Hawaii?
this, yeah. This is the Wahiawa Value Added Center example. And if you haven't visited and ever want to, we can easily set that up for you. So we can go to the next slide. Next slide. So I'm gonna give you a little background. We can go, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I know.
So
I was looking at the picture.
So in 2024, so we're backtracking. We're backtracking to Act 195, and this was the bill, in some ways we can say championing by this organization. The Master Food Preservers and members of your organization came together to say this was an important need. We spent, I think, at least 2 legislative sessions trying to pass a cottage foods law, and it wasn't moving forward. So I was asked to step in with Senator Kanuha and his team, and many of you sitting here today, to say, hey, we need to do something. And one of the things I noticed, and I will tell you, when I started meeting virtually with some of your friends doing this great work, it was like a foreign language. I was so lost. It was like, I don't know if I can help pass a bill that I don't know what pH is and all these terms and water bath, and it seemed like a foreign language, and I'll tell you, I was very challenged to get up to speed with what all of it meant. But one of the things I was able to disseminate is we were trying to pass what most states call cottage food legislation, and what I learned very early on is the Department of Health used homemade foods as their language. So I just told everyone, I'm so new to this, but I'm gonna throw this out there. DOH doesn't use the same language maybe the rest of the country and all of you are using. Can we speak their language? Because maybe they'll like this bill just a little bit more. And so that's why, if you're like, why do we call it homemade foods? Why aren't we saying cottage food? Seem confusing. I don't know why. I know you guys are like, we know what all of that means. But synthesizing similar language was one of those keys that helped. So
That's why I vote for you. You can do that.
we just wanted to all speak the same language as a start. But how we revised the definition of homemade foods was important. Again, we asked them to create administrative rules by December 31st, 2024. And let's go to the next slide, Ken. When did these rules actually pass? August 24th, 2025. So they didn't follow the rule in time. We're not going to get mad at them because they did establish finally admin rules, but we had to put a lot of pressure. And it does take time to establish admin rules. But I just wanted to go over with you today and take the bulk of the time to talk about what changes were in the admin rules. So one of the key points of the legislation that we passed was expanding the allowable foods on the homemade food list. So you can see here, add the definition to include pickling, fermenting, acidified plant food products with the pH variances there, with water activity level. So you can see that. That was one of our big key things that we were pushing for. The other thing and part of the law was, can we sell these in other places? can we sell it online? So we were able to make adjustments there. So this is the language in the law. What I will tell you is, how do we interpret that and what does that mean? So the Department of Health has created a new form. So if you know what how many of you have seen the old homemade foods info sheet that doesn't do enough or say enough? It's still vague, it's confusing, then you have to ask for help of what does it mean. So I'm just gonna check time. Okay. So they made us a new form, but I'm not gonna hand it out to you because I found out there are already issues and inconsistencies that will create more and more confusion. So when we added the pickling, fermenting, acidic black plant foods, some of the things that are now supposed to be available and usable now are pickling, kimchi, any kind of chutneys. Those are examples. But one of the things we're still struggling with, and Ken and Jane have been advocating for, is give us the whole list of yes or no. But still, they're bundling the list in like packages of themes. So we still have some work to do, and that's something we're still gonna press upon them. They did say salsas are now a yes, which we were told straight up that that would be a no. So that's why we can't hand this out to you, because it's confusing. So one of the things that has changed in packaging and labeling that they would like to see is they would like the list of food allergens also to be included. I know some of you may just bold it. I don't know if that's enough, or you need a separate section now of food allergens under the ingredient list. We're gonna ask for clarification on that point, but that's one of the labeling changes that has come up. Definitions are important, and I think the definitions are there, but the new handout compared to the old handout, the definitions are kind of lost within the document versus straight up defining what is a homemade food kitchen, what does homemade foods mean. Just some of those definitions that were in the old form are not there in the new form. So it's confusing for people, for all of us. And then when they do clarify that you can sell your product online now, which was a big part of the piece of legislation. So that's a huge win. We wanted to kind of expand that opportunity as much as possible. But the only way we were actually able to pass this was we would create the bill, we'd push it forward, Department of Health would just badger and beat up the bill publicly if you've seen any of our committee testimony. Well, what we decided to do is, let's just talk to them and sit down, and they can say all the things they hate about the bill. In private, we can try to make adjustments, work together with them. And what we found is there were issues of things, but there were also commonalities. It was just the anger with this legislation for so many years. They were jumbling what they wouldn't move on and what they would. So we just had to synthesize where we could find common ground and translate that common ground. And then we were like, well, you give us the language and we'll rewrite the bill. So we didn't get everything that we wanted to, and I know there's things you still want to see adjusted. Now that the admin rules just passed, let's see how like the next year or two goes. And please give us feedback on what's missing, what's terrible, what we need to move forward, because I think we still have opportunities to strengthen this legislation. And I'm not the expert, and I want to say clearly that I'm the one that helped create the law with many of you, but still the Department of Health manages the law. And their mandate is not to grow more food, sell more food, make businesses productive in the food space. Their mandate is to protect public health. So we just have to find the common ground of how all of the great foods you create do not cause breakouts and people aren't dying. And we know they're not, right? But what baby steps and assurances can we give people? Because, you know, Senator Kahaloa and I pushed this because when they were saying you need to go to a commercial kitchen, I said, our communities don't have them. If we had them all over the place and everyone could rent them out, I know Hilo has a little bit more opportunity, but a lot of parts of the rest of the island, it is very expensive and difficult for some of your businesses to go all the way to a commercial kitchen. So to help rural communities thrive, we have to find a way. I said if there were kitchens everywhere, everybody would be certified and it wouldn't be easy to do this and move forward. But that's not the reality we face, and unless the state wants to, again, we're opening shared facilities which could provide commercial kitchen space, but in the meantime, until we do that, we need to find common ground. People aren't making these amazing foods to get people sick. They're doing it because they're amazing products, and we're helping agriculture and local food businesses thrive. So again, it's somewhat of the value system. Department of Ag champions stuff like this, but this is food regulation to protect public health. So there's a little bit of cross issues of, they don't care if businesses thrive, they just want to make sure people are healthy and nobody gets sick. So we had to speak their language because they weren't understanding why this piece of legislation was so very important to us. On that note, I know we don't have a lot more time. I want to open up for questions on anything in agriculture, but I know people are really passionate about the cottage food legislation.
Oh, you got all people.
Yes.
I want to say a big thank you. Folks, I don't know if you know, you have never gotten this full cast. You did so much, you had so much common sense through those hearings, and you kept it cool. And it was like easy. I watched it because I was like waiting when I had to do my turn or whatever. You were awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for acknowledging that. It was hard to keep your cool when someone's yelling and bashing, because then you want to yell back and defend the legislation, but I decided everybody has their positions, and if we can talk in the background in a civilized manner, yes, there was a lot of anger towards this piece of, a lot of hate, anger, emotion.
It's all in the committee reports.
So if you haven't seen them,
You gotta read it. It's a great lesson.
not everyone kind of yells at hearings, but Department of Health was fiery, and it's hard not to fire back. I think I tried to keep my cool, but it was hard. I think there was some finance comments when I sat on the finance committee, so I had the luxury of being able to hear the bill multiple times in the agriculture committee and then sitting on finance. And I would say at finance, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be difficult. But how we find common ground and speak human to human, and we made progress. It's not perfect. We have a lot to go. And I will acknowledge, in one of our agri-policy summits that we did on Hawaii Island last year, we had a discussion about this. And one of the things we asked the Department of Health is, once the admin rules are established, please do trainings on every island. Please teach your inspectors about this new admin rule. And please have community meetings. So that's something, because the admin rules just passed in August, we pushed them to get a flyer. So actually, if you didn't ask me to speak, I probably wouldn't have put pressure, no one would have put pressure on them to translate what they did to paper. It's not perfect, but when would they have gotten a document out for everyone to utilize? So I said, two big conferences.
2036.
We'd have had to put legislation to make them make a flyer. But this is complex information. It's important. We know all of you want to follow it, but if it doesn't make sense or it's confusing, it's very difficult. So the step one is 2 conferences in the next month asking about this legislation and speaking specifically have paved the way to get them to make this. It's not perfect and we gotta fix it, but in that space it's continuing the conversation and holding them accountable. So when a form gets better, I will still hold them accountable to coming into community, whether it's through all the county master food preserver networks. We'll find out which is the best way, but the Department of Health needs to come and speak to you, because they're the ones that have to mandate this, and we know they're giving differences of opinion in the law and how they're interpreting it, and it needs to be consistent. So please keep either telling Jane or Ken when there's problems, or rallying it up to my office since we passed the legislation and we have our
No,
little
but just
network.
tell Lori.
Oh, tell Lori.
Yeah.
But please pass it up if there's problems with the interpretation of the Department of Health, because again, I think there's a little bit of lack of training to disseminate the information appropriately, but I don't know if there's any other questions. I know we're over time slightly.
I got- Just looking forward, I think one of the takeaways you're saying is that, yeah, you know, everybody's coming from a different perspective, and you gotta find a way to find some common ground to talk, because it's easy to hate each other, and then that gets us nowhere. But you were serving as the bridge on a lot of that stuff. What are lessons that you can help us with in the communication? Because I think the legislators are very approachable for anyone to talk to, but that's not the case in the state government.
Yeah.
So what is your advice?
Wait a minute, Sharon's here. It's
Well,
not the case
with
Department
one
of Health.
exception, that's it.
You know, I think one of it too is I was able to link cottage food legislation to value-added production, and there were many legislators in the House and the Senate really championing these manufacturing facilities.
Food
And how do I
sustainability.
tie, so not everyone that doesn't know cottage foods didn't know that that is a pathway to the value-added manufacturing chain. So connecting the language of homemade foods, cottage foods, and connecting the pathway of scaling up production from farm to manufacturing, and that this law is part of that chain and growth process.
Yes.
You know, if people don't it seems obvious, and I know it's super obvious to you guys, but in the legislature it wasn't. So I also asked, hey, can we add the words value-added production anywhere in the bill? Because that will gain, I believe, more support, and we find more bridge common ground for those who are unfamiliar. I do think we need to teach people more about cottage foods, and that it's not just a Hawaii thing, that it is national, and how we get the awareness out of how valuable and important this industry is, I think is important. But I think if we just continue to talk story with any of your elected officials or those working in the food space, and
be nice.
our goal is just to try to solve problems, and sometimes those problems take statutory law. You know, we thought it's really weird to have a bill to amend admin rules. Bills don't always do that, but it's because the Department of Health didn't want to do this, right? So we had to force the hand in a way. So it's just continuing to build relationships. So there's a lot of work to do to strengthen the food safety codes, where we made progress. It was a long time coming. Thank you folks for your patience. And you know, sometimes if we don't know where the problems are, we don't know how to solve them. And I will tell you, like I said before, when I jumped into this, I was like, this is a foreign language and it's very specific.
Now you're writing dictionaries.
How can I help if I don't know the lingo? But again, other members, I think that was the other issue. Members saw the statute and there was a lot of food preserver specific language and they don't understand it. So if you don't understand it too, you might think there's something hidden that could be bad. And if you don't know, and it's too complex. So a lot of the legislation too of what we did was synthesize, so that if you're not that smart, you can still figure it out. So that is one of the strategies to simplify legislation. If it's too complex, it's hard to get people on board. Because sometimes people think, is there a hidden bomb, or is there something there that will cause, sometimes you create laws for good, but there's ancillary negative effects. So if you don't understand the proposed law, you might not be able to judge if there's ancillary impacts.
Jane
Do we
has
have one more
or I'll
question?
get yelled at.
It's
Then we
actually not
gotta.
a question. Not everyone here knows Ken and myself. So what you could do is, you do have a question, you can send it to nfphawaii@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, which is nfphawaii.org. As I said, not everyone here is an alumni, and even if you are alumni, laws have changed. Even our text has changed significantly as well too. Don't be afraid to send us an email. It's only Ken and myself who actually see it. And sky's the limit. There's a lot of gray areas. So if you're not sure, just send us an email.
And And then one comment I forgot to mention is Jane mentioned that there could be a random inspection. And I got language from the Department of Health in a FAQ to prep for this that said, as I quote, no, HMFs are exempt from the DOH food establishment permit process, which means they are neither inspected nor issued permits by the Department of Health. Fact, there is a homemade HMF labeling requirement and a food safety education component associated with HMFs to advise consumers and educate producers respectfully. So they're saying no routine inspections or certifications are required. So again, that's an area where someone at the state level is saying no, but at the inspector level that could be a variance. So if you know of these situations, if you rally it to us, we can maybe make adjustments. So again, the admin rules created at the top are not always disseminated at a local level, and not to disregard the information that our DOH inspectors are doing, but the bulk of their work is inspections for retail establishments. So they're not understanding yet the full nuances of homemade food and the regulation there, even though the regulation isn't great. Sometimes they're mixing the food establishment regulation with the homemade food regulation, so they're getting a little bit cross information. But we appreciate all that you do. You can email them, you can also let us know, even though I may not represent you in the legislature, I want to represent you in this industry and sector of work that you do, so I will. And when we establish a law, it's the gift that keeps on giving, so you keep having to work through the nuances until you get it right. So Senator Kanuha and I appreciate all that you do, but we know we're not done yet, and there might be little changes we have to do or things we have to poke on the back end to make these laws the best they can be for the work that you're doing. So thank you guys very much for having me. And I will be around if you have questions later.
Thanks. Yeah, we won't promise not to poke you too hard. Actually, we don't have problems with the legislature. I mean, I've known Senator Kahaloa since he was in high school, and I had hair. It was a long time ago. So our problem has been communications on the back end. You know, in 1600, they had the Battle of Sekigahara in Japan, and Tokugawa unified all of Japan. And then in 1868, they had the Meiji Restoration, and they gave the power, Tokugawa's gave the power back to the emperor. Our Department of Health is somewhere in that time period. So, and the only other guy who was there to witness it is Derek Carice. Come on up, Derek.